This is Thad Rohr, and I want to give you some School Finance 101. The reason I want to give this to you today is, one, just for some knowledge of finance to apply to legislation as we know it today. Secondly, to share facts with your community, the people that you're around, the Friendswood community folks that you hang out with, and really just to prepare for fall 2023. So first, I want to just talk a little bit about school taxes in general. We all on our tax bill receive a school tax finance number, and it's the amount charged for every $100 of value. In Friendswood right now it's $1.20. That's actually down 3 cents from last year. But the thing I want you to know about or learn about is just the two buckets that this general tax rate comes from. First is the maintenance and operation bucket. This is the bucket where our $60 million per year budget comes out of to pay for salaries, to pay for the electricity, to pay for insurance, to pay for the operations day-to-day of Friendswood ISD. It is 91 cents per every $100 of value of your home. Property tax rate that goes towards the maintenance and operations of the day-to-day district. This is the debt service or INS bucket, but really probably a better way to think of it is our mortgage. This is 29 cents. This bucket is used to pay for our bonds, what we've borrowed to be able to put construction projects into place over the last several years. Our last bond was a 2011 bond. We just finished passing and working on a bond for $128 million. This is, in this bucket, is the amount of money used to be able to pay for our mortgage, 29 cents. This bucket is determined by our school board every year. When they pass the budget, based on what the values are for the district, they pass the amount needed to come out of school taxes to be able to pay for our mortgage each year. These two buckets combined together come up to $1.20 per every $100 of value, but nothing from this bucket can be used for the operations of the school district. Both of these buckets actually show up on your tax statement, but we all look at this $1.20 to know how much do I have, what's my tax rate for FISD. So essentially, we have all these brand new facilities being built, which is exciting, and we're thankful for our taxpayers passing that, us able to move forward with that. But you could have amazing new facilities coming up and have a salary freeze, have a deficit, because none of this money can be moved over to this side of the operations side. This gives you an idea of the tax rate comparison for the last 5 years. So we start here with 2018 at $1.36.7, and you can see it going steadily down all the way to 2022, $1.20, what we just basically talked about. So this reduction has been our board moving down our mortgage side, or it could be also the legislature as they buy down tax rates. And right now, I think that's something this special session that just started, that is just going to start, we'll be looking at is using some of the surplus, the $30 billion surplus in Texas, a portion of that utilized to buy down the property tax rates for those of us who live here in Friendswood. This gives you an idea of the tax rate comparison to local school districts. So over here on the far right side, we have Alvin at $1.37, and on the far left, we have Galveston at $1.03, and then CCISD, Friendswood, Santa Fe, Dickinson, Pearland, Texas City, Pasadena. But you can see Friendswood's rate just a couple up above Galveston. So essentially, as you sit with folks around you, sit around the table or sit at a ball game or something and talk about the high tax rates in Friendswood, the rate is actually one of the lower rates in the area. It's actually the property values, who's not set by Friendswood ISD, is set by the appraisal board, is what has driven up our taxes, our property taxes. This is an important slide. So let's talk about how the general fund, the maintenance and operation, the monies that come in to be able to pay for Friendswood ISD, the operations of Friendswood ISD, how that comes in. I want you to think of it in terms of a pie. So in terms of this pie, the money that comes in, the revenue, 71.1% come from local property taxes. The property taxes that we pay, those of us who live in Friendswood ISD, the property taxes that we pay fund for 71% of the pie. 28.1% comes from the state. So what the legislature is working on right now in terms of the amount of funding per student to be able to give to different school districts, should that be increased with this $30 billion surplus? That is the side of the pie that makes up this other major portion. And then the last portion are federal sources. So title programs, you've heard of Title I schools, comes from the federal government. And that money is given for different pieces. The largest piece is given for the number of low socioeconomic students that are in a school district. So we receive a little bit less than 1% of our funding from that. Here's what's important to know about this slide. The size of this pie does not change. It remains the same based on the current funding formula. So as local property values go up, the size of the state funding, which is what is the legislature just finished up. They finished up passing a budget, finished up just yesterday not increasing school funding except for one piece in terms of related to safety. Going back into a special session to think about lowering property values, buying them down essentially, which would be increasing some of the state sources. But the way the pie is divided up right now, the local properties values or taxes stop right here. The state sources begin. And if this number goes over the amount of the pie in general, that money goes back to the state. So Robin Hood is a term that's been used in the past. But essentially, for us, it's a little over $300,000 of our property tax money goes back to the state to be able to pay for the state sources in other school districts. What we hope in the school district is that the state would increase the pie by increasing their part of the state sources coming in for revenue. But this pie doesn't change. We could build Walmarts on every open piece of property. Our property values could increase, and that would just, for us at this stage in the game, the way the system is set up, would just be more money given back to the state, which is hard to do when you're facing a deficit budget the way Friendswood is right now. So, how can that pie actually change? Two ways. One, an increase in enrollment. Right now, each student is valued at a little over $6,000 per student. As more enrollment comes, that number comes in and becomes part of our revenue, the money that comes in. The second way would be to change the tax rate. There's a process that we'll talk about here in just a minute that changes the tax rate to expand the size of the pie to increase the funding to public schools. Enrollment, which is what we've been closely watching the legislature on, been asking for increasing that per student allotment considerably to be able to pay for strong public schools across Texas and especially here in Friendswood. That hasn't been done. A special session has been called, and right now there's two areas that they're focusing on in the special session, but increasing that allotment right now is not one of those. One piece of those is buying down local property taxes. That's part of the special session that they're going to be considering on how to do that. But as of right now, there's no increased funding for schools, the per pupil allotment in Friendswood ISD or across the state of Texas. So let's talk about if the tax rate was changed, how might that look? So the term for that is called a voter-approved tax rate election. It is local control. The voters of Friendswood ISD would have to elect to increase the operations, remember the bucket over on this side, tax rate, to expand the pie to be able to fund for salary increases for our FISD teachers and employees, to increase the amount of funds that we could use for different programs. The amount of portion that we could is 5 cents on every $100 of value. There's a ceiling. We are 5 cents from that ceiling, And so we could come to the voters, the board would have to make a decision to come to the voters in the fall or in election time and increase that 5 cents to be able to fund salaries and fund for increase in opportunities in Friendswood ISD. What do we spend the money on? The money that comes in, that revenue that we just looked at, the majority of it, 84.2% is spent on people, on salaries. Education is a people-heavy business. Our strategic plan, our call to action talks about the value of relationships, and those relationships are people to people, teachers to students, community with teachers, and that spills down. But that money is spent on people. So as we look at how do we decrease budgets, that's the largest part of our budget. 6.9% is on contracted services. And just like you and me at our home, the two biggest expenditures that make up nearly all of those contracted services are our electricity bill and our insurance. In Friendswood ISD, just like maybe your insurance at home and other school districts around, our insurance increased 40% this last year. An increase of 40% dramatically makes you have to make hard decisions, right? Same way that you're at home. You insure less value, you increase your deductibles. Those are decisions that are made in order to be able to afford that insurance. But that makes up a large part of that contracted services. Fuel for the buses, other things that happen year to year are a piece of that, which gives us essentially 9% supplies and materials and other costs to consider areas to cut, to try and run a little bit leaner and meaner, versus the number of personnel that we have in Friendswood ISD that we need to be able to move forward with the types of schools that we have. So where are we? This year, we have a $3.2 million deficit budget that was passed by the Board of Trustees. That's if we spend 100% of our budget. The board took a bold move in moving forward with a 1% salary increase for our teachers, even though it was meeting a deficit budget to be able to see what the legislature would be able to come forward with. Where we end now, however, as we move into this following year is we understand right now at this point in time that there aren't additional funds for public schools. Right now we have a $3.4 million deficit for the coming year, with a 2% increase for our employees to remain competitive, to get the top-notch employees here in Friendswood in an area that pays higher than we do, surrounding areas. So as we work on our budgets, we do our best, just like you do at your budget at home, to not spend 100% of our budget. Typically, we spend about 98% of the budget, which cuts this number in half. And then hopefully, as we move on to this next year, even with inflation moving up, 17% inflation, without any adjustments outside, means that we're going to have to make some hard choices. But at this point in time, this is what our planning number is as we step into next year to remain competitive with our employees and to pay our teachers. We certainly can't pay them what they're worth, the value that they are for our democracy, for our workforce development, just for our Friendswood ISD identity. We want to be able to do more. And so we're looking at ways that we could possibly do that, creative ways, but it's really difficult when you run into deficit numbers like that. So I just would ask you as a community, as our team, just continue to watch legislation as we go into the special session. We know no additional funding has been given to schools on the student allotment at this point in time, but there is legislation right now for tax relief in the special session. Just continue to watch where money will be spent. We do know that there's a safety provision that's going to be given to schools to be able to increase the level of commitment to safety. Vouchers were really the piece that seemed to be connected to that additional funding. Those haven't moved through at this time, but I would just ask for you to continue to watch as sessions unfold. And right now our timeline, when we put this together, we were hoping to be able to have the idea settled of what funding would look like, what that revenue slide would look like as we came to the end of the school year. We do know now where we sit, and we'll have to make budget decisions based on that as we come to the end of our budget year, which is at the end of August, and begin our new budget year in September. So thanks for taking the time to watch. You can email us with questions from this presentation if you wish. Contact us on our FISD website. We'll target you towards maybe someone that we can point to answer those questions. But just wanted to catch you up on where we are in the state of school finance 101. Thank you.